Hey guys, my name is Tara Babcock, and today you're watching this week's episode of The Tara Show. Today we're going to be talking about this extra super ultra violent game called Hatred. It's gotten a lot of you guys freaked out, and I want to give my opinion on it. But first, let's finish up last week's topic and talk about you guys' comments that you posted down there. XenoRanger79 said, "My first was Batman based on the 1989 movie. I played it on Game Boy. When you're a kid, these games are so amazing. You're playing as Batman. Freaking awesome, right? Well, as an adult, I look back and the shoddy controls, slow pacing, and inability to see much around you due to the Game Boy screen was just awful. The NES version wasn't much better. My favorite game based on a movie was the Jurassic Park game for the Sega CD. Not only did it expand on the universe, but it didn't screw with the timeline. You had to get in and out before the government nuked Jurassic Park, which was part of the book. Sure, it was a point-and-click adventure, but there's still something about the music and environment that's memorable. Also, the imagination wanders when you hear your character scream as if they're being torn apart." And Mr. Hart Batman said, "My favorite movie based off of a game has to be the first Resident Evil movies. I know they are not great, but I love them because they're not the greatest movies of all time. I do like games based off movies that are not completely based off the movie like you said. I've noticed when companies try to base it off the movie, the game is terrible, but when they try to take influence from the movie, the games are either enjoyable or outright amazing. So I have a love-hate relationship with them." I think most of us can agree on that, right? And Samantha Cartsy said, "Incredibly, this year we had a decent amount of good games based on movies for once. We cannot complain. It could have gone the other way around. Now we need a good RPG and RTS game this next year to be satisfied." You hear that, game developers? You better get on it.
My whole life is just cold, bitter hatred. And I always wanted to die violently.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to talk about Hatred. I'm usually not that politically correct, and you know this if you watched any of my other YouTube videos, but I'm gonna try to do this for Zoomin.tv Games. The guys at Zoomin.tv Games didn't know whether or not we should take on the topic of hatred, but there were so many comments from the community that we kind of wanted to talk about our perspective. Hopefully I can do so without offending anyone and keeping my job here at Zoomin Games.
And I will put in the grave as many as I can. It's time for me to kill.
So in Hatred, you start out with your protagonist saying, "It's time for me to kill, it's time for me to die, my genocide crusade begins here." And then he goes on slaughtering pretty much anyone mindlessly. Policemen, innocent women screaming for their lives, anyone. According to the Polish game studio, Destructive Creations, the game doesn't have a plot, it doesn't have a story, it doesn't have a meaning, it's just meant to be pure fun, and people shouldn't take it as seriously as, they are. Being as logical as I am, I would say it's pretty ridiculous to say that you're blaming any kind of real-life violence on media, like, oh, he listened to Marilyn Manson so he killed himself, or oh, he went and shot up a school because he played a game called Hatred. That's just ridiculous to me. So I'm just gonna go ahead and ignore that topic altogether and just talk about how it's a freaking game and people shouldn't freak out so much. Sure, there aren't that many games that have taken this stance and just gone ahead and been like mindlessly killing people. Like GTA, for instance, that's not the meaning of the game. Sure, you can do stuff like that in those games, but that's definitely not what the developers of the game wanted you to do. There's clear plots and clear storylines and stuff like that to actually make you not do things like that. Like, you have a mission and you can decide whether or not to stay in the lanes with your car or drive over an old lady. And that's totally up to the discretion of the player, but isn't the intention of the developer. In Hatred, however, the intention of the developer is to just go ahead and kill a bunch of innocent people, so you can see how people are kind of getting their feathers ruffled over this crap. But honestly, it's just a game. Why does it matter if you're controlling the protagonist when we can watch any kind of movie based on, genocide or whatever? Not every piece of media has an underlying moral that you have to follow, and not every game based on something dark means that the intentions of the developers is to show that this dark thing is good. And it's really annoying to me in media when people have to make a moral out of something. Like, for instance, if they're doing a World War II movie, it has to be from the side of, like, the Americans or the Jews, and it has to show that the movie developers really think that this thing was bad that the Nazis did, instead of just kind of portraying something and, making it neutral. So to me, I think it's really ridiculous that people are getting freaked out over this. Sure, don't let your 8-year-old kid play it, but don't freak out about it like it shouldn't exist. Freedom of speech is a huge thing for me, and I think it's very important that games like this are allowed to exist. If you don't like it, don't play it.
Oh, yeah.
Other games like Postal 2 and Manhunt also have you killing a bunch of people, but they're not necessarily innocent, and it's not necessarily the main reason that you're playing the game. Carmageddon is a little bit like this, but it's not actually like a mass murder type situation, so it's still different. So with the Polish developers kind of pushing the lines so much, it's, I guess, normal that you're gonna have a bunch of people up in arms. But I still think it's silly. So guys, let me know down in the comments what you guys think about Hatred. Would you play the game? Are you super offended by the game? Do you think the game should never exist? Or are you on my side and you think that there's freedom of speech involved and it's also just a freaking game and people should take it with a grain of salt and have the sense to, you know, process things that are happening and not just become a sheep that's, you know, gonna go out and kill people because they played a game that kills people? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you check out my own personal channel down in the description. By the way, I messaged the guys for a media pass so I can play this game on my channel because I'm interested. Alright, bye guys!